So I started thinking, why are we always in this like survival mode, reactive crisis? It also doesn't prepare us for the other side of challenge, which is opportunity. And so I just thought, why are we in survival mode? Why aren't we thinking of this as a preparedness, readiness muscle that you're always ready? And that resilience is actually, to me, it's intentional, it's muscle. So you're ready for anything, not just a crisis.
Yeah, yeah. And, when we were together in Lambertville and I'd heard your keynote speech around it, and I did quite a few things which kind of spoke to me very, very closely because we saw growing up, people telling you, you better than this, or you can push through this. And I particularly remember my father's death when I was 21 old, and I went back home. I was studying then, and we'll have people come and we were grieving. As I was grieving, they're like, "Oh, you are young. You will get through this. You are strong. You'll get through this." And when you were talking in Lambertville, I'm like, what if there was more space for me to just be, and somebody was there holding my hand to help through this and say, yes, it's okay to feel sad, it's okay to feel weak, it's okay to feel that you have lost something, because you've lost a parent. And I just it had moved me greatly, and so that is another reason I'm really delighted you're here and talking to our listeners as well.
Yeah. And then what if you also had all through your life been building a muscle so that it doesn't negate the fact that you're grieving. It doesn't negate the fact that that's a hard situation, but you also had more tools to sort of deal with it ahead of time. Does that make sense? It doesn't
It
make a
does,
difficult
because the
situation.
only tool I was being offered was to push through this. And I did. I did push through this. I thought I had to take that responsibility for my mom. And I remember just doing everything that was needed in that time with all the paperwork and all the hassle around. My father hadn't left a will, so it made things extremely difficult. But I continue to feel it for years to come. It was that healing process took so long. If I had tools, and yes,
Yeah.
the
And
way
it's
to build this.
interesting, right? Because I feel like so another core tenet of the book is this idea that I think that way of thinking and of telling people that's where things happen to you, right?
Hmm.
But I don't think anything actually happens to us. I think that everything in life happens through us. And we have, or we should have, a lot of agency and choice and empowerment in what happens through us and how we process it and what we're choosing to learn through situations. I think about the hardest things that have ever happened to me, and they didn't happen to me. They
Mhm.
happened, everything that came out of them happened through me. I made decisions about what I was going to learn, how I was going to frame them, how I was going to grow from them. And so this becomes it's a reframing and a shifting of, I don't want to use the word victim mentality, but I think so many times, think about teams, think about anything where you're like, why is this happening to me? What are we going to do about this? As opposed to, okay, what is this an opportunity for? Or, what are we going to do with this? And so I think that's a really big mindset shift in the book too, of like, okay, is growth going to happen from this? Is learning, is adaptability, is innovation, whatever it is, nothing happens to us.
Such a,
Everything happens through us, but you got to kind of have those muscles in place, right?
I think that's such a powerful reframe. It's not an ordinary reframe. It's a huge mind shift.
Yeah.
Is that what you call intentional resilience in your book?
Yes. Yeah. So instead of reactive resilience, it's intentional.
Yeah, yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about it? How to develop that muscle if we can start, moving towards that.
Yeah, yeah. So I like to think of it as like, think about driving, right? So there's a reason we all really dislike, well, I don't know anyone that likes this, but being behind a student driver, right? Because when you're first learning to drive, everything is very conscious. So you're like hyper aware of where your hands are, what your eyes are seeing, and that's why they're so slow and methodical, right? And it's tiring. But after just a few years of driving, you just internalize all the mechanics of driving. It just becomes a muscle memory. That's why you can suddenly end up somewhere and you're like, "Oh, I don't even quite know what route I took to get here," right? You just internalize all those micro moments and those physical elements and the mental ones of driving. And I think you can do the exact same thing to build the muscle of intentional resilience. I like to think of it as, in the book, I talk about it as micro moments.
Mm-hmm.
This is not eating the whole elephant at
Mm.
once. You can do this in the tiniest little ways because tiny things build muscle. Tiny things can move a mountain eventually, right? So I think of it as just what are the ways that you can start to do little things that will become a habit that will build a muscle so you can internalize the mechanics of shifting your resilience from one kind to the other. We all have resilience already.
Mm.
We're
Mm.
alive, we're resilient. It's just how are we shifting it upstream like this? So just simple things. And there's a lot of elements, I think. There's like what kinds of how curious are you? What kinds of questions are you asking? How are you communicating? What kind of clarity do you have? How are you making decisions based on what values or what are your convictions? Even something like, I don't think resilience is not about just you, it's about the whole community, right? It's a team sport. So there's just these different elements, and then which of those elements are you going to lean into in little tiny ways?
Mm.
Just
Mm.
little micro moments that you can lean in, and they're not huge, they don't take a lot of time.
Mm.
There's just lots of examples that we could dive into that you could start to do this in two
Right.
minutes a day. Yeah.
Right away. As you were saying this, I said, oh, what if I'm more curious? What does it look like? What question can I ask when I feel like somebody's, upset me or somebody's jolted me or got me off balance, created stress, anxiety? How can I get a little bit more curious about that?
Yeah. So just think about like when I think about the teams that I work with, so often, right, there's like, well, why did this happen? Why did
Mm,
this happen to us? As opposed to, okay, what what can this mean? What are
mm,
the implications? So we're not asking the why, we're not asking the to you. We're
mm,
asking, okay, what opportunities can this be? Which of my values is this maybe challenging? Why is this frustrating me? So you're sort of doing like a little bit of like a self-examination. And you're also, what you're doing is also giving yourself a little pause, right? Because the
mm,
pause is what helps us shift from a reaction to a response. We're kind of like just de-escalating that kind of visceral reaction, which causes burnout and all that cascade of hormones that, can lead to the adrenaline surge. So any kind of curiosity where you're saying, okay, why is this stressful? Why does this feel stressful? Why does this feel urgent? Cadence is another one. Like, why
mm,
is it that we always feel so compelled to react quickly? Not
mm,
everything is urgent. A lot of things are noise. So I think there's that curiosity of like, I'll frequently respond to someone and say, got your message. You will get a response from me in the next, you will get a response. Sometimes I don't even want to commit to a time,
mm.
right? You will hear back from me.
Yeah.
Now I've kind of bought myself this like space. Those are little micro moments.
Yeah, yeah, and that pause creates a sense of relief.
Yeah. And control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see that in today's world, with the onslaught of AI, which is here and is shifting things in such a big
And
way.
so fast, right?
Yeah, yeah, and this becomes even more important that we are redefining resilience. Also, are we are rebuilding that resilience through these you know, you call them
Moments, micro
moments,
moments. Yep.
micro moments. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we look at all the changes coming in what ways do you think this kind of muscle can help with all what's happening in the world now? Everything seems
Yeah.
topsy-turvy.
Totally. I think what it does, again, like you said, it gives you that ability to pause. It also gives you the foundation. So I really think it's important. This is what I call the fallacy of resilience in high stakes situations. So whenever I ask people, all right, how are you going to handle things when the stakes get high? People usually say, oh, don't worry, I got it under control. But
Mm,
ask yourself, why do we wear seatbelts? Why do we
mm,
take life jackets on a boat when it's sunny? Is because it's too late to scramble for them when things get a little hairy, right? So we put
mm,
them on proactively, prophylactically, actually. And so it's the same thing by knowing your values. It's the same thing by building this muscle. It's too late to scramble when the stakes get high. So you've got to know way ahead of time what values you're going to use to make a decision. You've got to have the clarity. You've got to have that conviction. And so when people say to me, oh, don't worry, I know, but when the stakes are high, I'll figure it out. It's too late. Your resilience will atrophy, just like a muscle.
yeah.
So figuring it out now, knowing your foundation, knowing your non-negotiables. This is not soft and squishy. This is this is like table stakes, right? But
Mm,
doing it now, building that muscle, even something as simple as like, what are your core three values?
mm,
If you can't name them now, you're not going to be able to grab them
mm,
when you're presented with a really high stakes situation.
mm,
That
mm,
gets really tiring. Make it a muscle memory now so that when you need it, you already have that seatbelt on, you know? And it's going, just think about like how does this tie into AI and how fast things are changing? The world is changing really fast. So you need some ballast so that you're not flipping around in that turbulence.